Hello interwebs, welcome to Let's Build Computers. Today we're going to have a first impressions look at the Palit JetStream GeForce GTX 1070. Now this is basically the cheapest 1070 that you can buy as of the recording of this video. I paid about $380 for this, if my memory serves me. That's £380. So obviously it's probably going to be cheaper in America just because the pound sucks at the moment, but whatever. This fella was very attractive to me because it's a very low price 1070, but it still has an aftermarket cooler on it, because the first rule of graphics cards is never buy a reference cooler. So the box itself is pretty awesome. We've got this fold-out thing that gives you all the details of it under this cover. So as you can see, we've got the twin blower cooler on it, got a backplate on it as well, and it's a nice fancy heat pipe design, etc, etc. So you can probably read all of this guff on their website, so I'll let you do that. However, it is worth noting straight away that it is a dual BIOS card. This is super cool for overclocking. If you ever watched my video on the Vga 980 Ti Kingpin, you'll know that having multiple BIOSes on your graphics card is awesome if you want to overclock it. Because if you brick your card, you can magically unbrick it again, which is super cool. So let's open this thing up and see how much we get inside. So it's a big box. It's huge for a graphics card. It's one of the biggest boxes in the system that I'm building at the moment. So as we open it up, we've got really nice presentation of just the graphics card at the top, which is really nice. I love it when they present stuff like this. It's the first thing you see. Right, we'll have a look at the card in just a moment. I'm just going to have a quick nose through the box and see what we've got first. We've got a quick installation guide. We've got a driver disk, not that we're going to use that. We've got, what is that? It's some kind of transfer. It's mirrored, so it goes on the inside. I think the idea is you can put that on the inside of your case window, if one was so inclined. So that's kind of cool. What else? We've got a, this is a dual 6-pin to 8-pin power connector. Although if you need one of those, then your power supply sucks. Anything else in there? No, that's our lot. So this is a really bare bones box. There's not a lot in here, but this is what you get for £380. So as you can see, if you buy a more expensive card, you'll have all kinds of goodies in the box. On this one, we get nothing. But to be honest, on a lot of builds, most of the goodies are not really worth anything and you just don't use them. So I call it good value. Right, let's take this out of the bag and take a look at the card. This thing is immense, it's massive. And I don't just mean in the height and width, but it's really thick. God, this thing is a beast. It's enormous. Look at that. That's like, this is like a triple thickness cooler here. It's huge. So yeah, let's bring the camera in and I'll just do a quick tour of this thing. So on the top, dominating the top of the card, we've got these twin 100mm blowers. Now that's a great start straight away, just because that means these things are going to run nice and quiet, and silence is a good thing. We all love silence. Now the reason for that big thickness is that not only have we got a monstrously thick heatsink, which if I just angle the camera there we go. If I angle the camera there, you can see on a pen just how deep that is. That's probably about 1.5 inches deep, that heatsink. That goes right up into this plastic cowl, which is why this cooler is so thick. It's really, really huge. And that just means that we've got a lot of space. And that means that this thing will be able to run cool most of the time, because the problem with having a small heatsink is your fans have to do more work. Whereas with a big heatsink, that can absorb a lot of heat without the fans having to run very loud. So it means everything can run nice and cool and quiet, and then it only has to ramp up when it needs to. So if we just do a tour around the outside, we've got a single 8-pin connector to power it, which is nice. So your power supply requirements are really low on this. You just need that 8-pin connector, and that's all you need on this. So wiring is going to be nice and tidy. I'm not sure yet, but I'm guessing this Palit logo is going to light up as well. So it'll look nice and pretty from the outside. Of course, we've got the Sli connectors if you're bonkers enough to have multiple ones of these. And then at the back, we've got the usual connectors. So we've got DVI, we've got 3 display ports, and we've got a HDMI. Now it's worth noting that on the 10 series, NVIDIA have dropped VGA output. So notice that this is a DVI-D connector, not DVI-I. The way to tell the difference is that it has a single flat slot there, and that means there's no analog output from this. So your DVI to VGA adapter ain't gonna fit this card. So you need to have digital displays to use this thing. It is possible to go from you can go from DisplayPort to VGA. I'm not sure what the functionality for that is, but I know it can be done. You can also go from HDMI to VGA using one of those disgusting HDMI to VGA adapters, and those work by having a passive digital to analog converter in line. So it's ugly, but it does work. So you can connect VGA monitors to this, but you're not supposed to. If you spend this much money on a graphics card, please buy a decent monitor and get something with DVI or HDMI. Right, so we're going to get this fitted into a computer. We'll get it fired up and run some tests on it and just see how cool it is. I'm not going to give you lots of breakdown benchmarks. There are other websites that will do a better job of that, but I can give you a first impressions and just tell you how I think this is to run and how well it fits in a computer as well, because that size is just blowing my mind. It's enormous. So I'll see you guys after the cut. Alright, it's time to fit our monster GTX 1070 Palit JetStream. So let's drop this into place. We're going to be using these 2 slots here. I say these 2 slots because this card is triple height. We're actually going to need 3 slots, although it only uses 2 on the back plate, so we only need to take out 2 blanking cards. Now this thing sticks up past the thumb screws by a good inch or so. So you're not going to be able to fit this thing into a narrow case. However, of course, the cooler does line up flush with the board. So this is based on the reference design. So this is not a commentation on the Palit version, but the 1070 in general. But where this thing really is enormous is just how wide that cooler is. This is triple slot. Now, although there is physically room to put another graphics card in there, if I just show you if I just bring the camera lined up, as you can see, it lines up perfectly with that slot. If you put another graphics card in there, it's going to block this one off entirely. So, despite the fact that this thing has got the Sli connectors on it, you basically can't use them. The only way you're going to be able to Sli this card is if you took this cooler off and water cooled it, because this thing is just simply too big to fit in an additional graphics card. So if you want to Sli this thing, you're going to need to water cool, because you can't block off those fans. It's just not going to have a good time. So the cooler is, I really hope this cooler is nice and quiet and effective, because it's obnoxiously huge. Like, it's not even funny how big this thing is. So we'll see how this goes. Okay, here's our finished and running computer. We've got Windows 10 running on this thing now, so it's set up and ready to go. So let's give you a quick walk around on just some of the features on the hardware, just to show you what they can and can't do. So Palit's tuning utility is called Thundermaster. And this is an overclocking facility and also includes the ability to adjust the LED settings on this card. Now, as you can see, the interface is kind of sort of cluttered. I don't know, I'm not a big fan of these futuristic hacker-looking user interfaces. This is not helpful to showing me information, in my opinion. It just makes me look at it and go, what the hell is this all about? However, it has what we need on it. We've got the temperatures, fan speeds, clock speeds, memory speeds, and so on. So we can use this to overclock, and it's got the usual suspects in. We've got multiple profiles and other features, BIOS updating, and so on and so forth. So it does the job. So also we have the LED facility in here. So we can switch the LED off like that. So as you can see, our LED panel is now turned off. We can tie it to the GPU temperature, which currently sets it to green, and that will change through different colors as the GPU warms up. We can also set it to rainbow mode, which is a cycling feature. Unfortunately, despite being an RGB LED, it doesn't have proper phase change cycling. So as you can see, it's just jumping between colors, which is kind of a bit naff, but then on the other hand, I'm not a big fan of rainbow setups anyway. Quite frankly, the only reason why you'd set your thing to rainbow is because you want to show off the fact that you have RGB LEDs. For me personally, I want to set it to the color of my case accent theming. So in this case, I'm going to set it to still and put it on red. And in addition to that, we can set the default power on color. So we can make sure that it will stay on red and it will automatically switch to red on startup instead of us having to run this software in the background. So the great thing is we don't need to have ThunderMaster running in order to have that custom LED color. So that's a good show there. Right, I'm not going to show you any overclocking stuff here. I'm not an expert on this. Check out other people for that, but we will run this thing up to speeds in a moment and just check on fan speeds and that kind of thing. Okay, so let's take a look at the overall performance of the big, huge cooler that's on this card now. I've got my phone open with a decibel meter just to give you a rough point of reference. So if I stop talking for a moment, you'll see it drop down to sort of the low 40s. Now bear in mind that I am in a high street shop, so unfortunately now and then cars are going to go by and ruin my test. But hopefully this should give you a rough idea on just sort of what kind of sound levels we're getting from this thing, as well as just my description. So first of all, the fans are currently completely off because it's idle. So let's just see what the noisiest the fan can get is. So I'm going to go to adjust, and I'm going to set a fixed fan speed of 100%. So here we go. Right, so those are fairly noisy, but as you can see, they're going about halfway up the graph. It still doesn't overcome the sound of my voice. So that's the noisiest we can go to. So let's cut those fans back down to the default. And now we're going to see how well it does under load. So for this, I'm going to set the LED to GPU temperature just so we can see how that looks as the card warms up. And I'm going to fire up Thermark as our test tool. So let me quickly install that. Right, okay, so let's see if just a 720p stress test is enough to take this up to full first. So here we go. Okay, we're running about 70, high 70s on the frame rate at the moment. So let's let that heat up and we'll just see when the fans cut in. So the LEDs have turned blue where it's getting to mid temperature now. Good grief. That heatsink is just soaking up the heat like a sponge at the moment. The fans have just come on, so we're at very low fan speed at the moment. Right, we're getting up to the high 60s. Fan is still only at 30%, and I still can't hear it running, and the decibel meter is still showing no noticeable change. I mean, there will be a little bit of noise, but it's not enough to overcome the ambient noise in the room. So, and it looks like, according to Thermark, it looks like our temperatures are leveling out as well, so I don't actually think it's going to get any hotter than that. Now, if I put the side panel on the case, that's going to increase the temperatures a little bit. You just feel we've got hot air coming out of the vents there. So, you know what, I'm going to put the side panel on. Let's just see if we can get those temperatures a bit higher. Now, because our CPU is water cooled and I'm using a top mount radiator, I've got no means of artificially increasing the internal case temperature. I mean, given time, that graphics card is going to heat up the inside a little bit more. but I think that's going to take a while, so I'm not going to sit and leave the camera rolling for that. All in all, I think we can safely say that this thing is super cool. So yeah, we're sitting at 67 and 33% fans, and I still can't hear it. So we could put a whacking great overclock on this thing and not even touch those fans. So if you want to start getting some big numbers out of this card, you can go straight ahead and do that on the air cooler. And I don't think you'd have any problems whatsoever. Very nice indeed. Alright, I think that's enough of that. I think we've proved the point. So you can see what this card is capable of, and considering this is the cheapest 1070 that money could buy at the time of purchase, I think that's pretty good going. So all in all, very impressed with this card. Would definitely recommend. Thank you very much for watching. I'll see you all next time. Goodbye for now.